Welcome back to the Sovereign Ratio. As we get closer to the next Bitcoin bull run and the halving, I think it's really important to go back, take a step back, and kind of present some more altcoins that I think are going to be great selections, or potentially great selections. Maybe we'll just review some that I'm not even sure about. But in this particular video, we're going to review one that I think is a great selection and that you should be checking out for the next bull run, and that is Bittensor and its native token TAO. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, follow me on Twitter for more updates, and leave a comment below. So first, what is Bittensor and why is it such a hot narrative? Well, first and foremost, Bittensor is a new blockchain that specifically deals in artificial intelligence and connectivity across the entire crypto space. If one were to simply read the information on the Bittensor website, it's very confusing and has a lot of technical jargon in it, which I'm sure the Bittensor folks see this as a simplification, but for the average person, it's a very complicated thing to understand. So I'm going to do my best to summarize it for you in applicable and palatable terms. So the first thing I think you'll notice is that Bittensor and Bitcoin sound similar, at least in the way that the nomenclature states. However, and they do have a lot of similarities. However, Bittensor in itself is essentially just a language that allows markets to be created and accessible to the entire crypto space. The real appeal here is that while these interconnected commodity markets are actually on the Bittensor blockchain, again, they are accessible to other chains and readily available to the entire crypto space. Because Bittensor is rooted in artificial intelligence, that makes the blockchain essentially have an unlimited potential, and it's very powerful. In addition to essentially being a language, Bittensor is also essentially a giant computer that is shared amongst everybody and not owned by a single entity. The really exciting and quite frankly a little bit scary thing about Bittensor is that a lot of the parameters within the protocol are not directly defined, and they're open to that artificial intelligence learning model, allowing the protocol to an extent to function on its own and create things on its own. As some of you may or may not know, Bitcoin's primary function is to define the way that computing power is validated, which we also know that that validation mechanism is called proof of work. Bitcoin's digital commodity incentive mechanisms are essentially perfect markets because they're immutable, unstoppable, and extremely powerful. Bittensor shares these qualities with Bitcoin, along with an immutable token, transparency on the blockchain like Bitcoin, and Bittensor is also run by miners, just like Bitcoin. The main difference between Bitcoin and Bittensor is that Bitcoin focuses on being totally immutable to external factors and transcending the common current economic system. Bitcoin accomplishes this with just a simple hash mechanism, while Bittensor's much more open language allows the creation of different writing systems alongside the market which Bitcoin and all other cryptos operate within. This allows the building of multiple intertwined commodity markets and kind of reminds me a little bit of a cross between Bitcoin and Chainlink, to be honest. Another difference between Bittensor and Bitcoin is the fact that Bittensor does work off of proof of stake, and the unlock schedule for the halvenings is not exactly the same as Bitcoin, even though there are a total of 21 million Bittensor, just like Bitcoin, and that can never be changed. As you can see in the graph here that I have, or the chart that I have here, the next halvening is in September of 2025 for Bittensor, but the entire 21 million should be unlocked by the sixth halvening in the year 2046 versus Bitcoin, which will not be fully unlocked until the year 2140. Also with this, mining rewards are not based off of the speed that is put into the mining itself, it's put into the quality of the mining. While Bittensor does have a slightly more aggressive mining schedule than Bitcoin, we can see that only 5,813,000 of those TAO tokens have been mined to this point, and the max supply again is 21 million, making Bittensor essentially like a new age artificial intelligence Bitcoin that's mined a little bit faster and doesn't take as long to fully develop. Why I find this so particularly interesting is that you could view this as buying Bittensor at $320, the same as buying Bitcoin at $320, though the progression of that price could potentially move much faster than Bitcoin just because it's mined faster, and there's an extra 100 years on Bitcoin to achieve full unlock versus Bittensor, which should be done by 2046. But one could make the argument that buying Bittensor at $322 is very similar to buying Bitcoin at $322, providing that Bittensor gets some sort of buy-in and consumer belief or investor belief to any extent that Bitcoin has. One thing that I find really interesting is that the narrative of Bittensor has really caught on, and it's difficult to look at any prominent X tweets from accounts that speculate on altcoins that don't mention Bittensor and its token TAO somewhere within the tweets. It's all over the place right now. But what I find interesting is that Bittensor only has 50.8K followers on Twitter. I don't know if that's because it doesn't say Bittensor in the name, it says Open Tensor Foundation, or if people just haven't done the research to actually understand what this token is. I find that very interesting that it only has 50.8K followers. Speaking of followers, while we're here, please do follow me on X and Twitter. I post charts there all the time. I post thoughts there all the time. Just started doing that recently because I know it's important to grow social media presence in addition to YouTube. Clearly, I don't have hardly any followers at all, but please do and go ahead and follow me there, and we'll get that count up and start developing the community on Twitter just like we do on YouTube. As always, I want to look at the charts, and here you go. This is the entire Bittensor chart. It's only been out since March, and it has already made an astronomical jump in price that is, quite frankly, hard to believe, showing a lot of excitement behind the project. You can see just recently, last week, Bittensor had a valuation of $365, all the way up from $28 just back in May. It's done an incredible gain of approximately 12x. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a big contender in the bull run for biggest gains from a big cap. If we pull out a Fibonacci retracement here and we just go to the bottom of the historical data and run it to this recent top, providing that Bitcoin continues to correct, of course, I would potentially see buy points at Bittensor around $200, around $160, and if you're really lucky, around $100, but I really don't think you'll ever see that again. I think 160, 200, and 230 are probably the three buy zones for DCA for me, unless the market crashes and we get really lucky and get something down here again, which would be supported at this resistance point around 125, and then this resistance point here at 97. Now, normally I would run a Fibonacci extension on this, but it's pretty pointless because we don't have enough historical data. And normally I would look at indicators, but we don't have enough data for real quality indicators on RSI, stochastic, or anything like that. So right now we're running purely based off of speculation on what price is going to do. But if there's any indication, I will tell you this. Bittensor at $300, the last time that Bitcoin was $300 prior to a bull run or prior to a halving, Bitcoin went from $300 to $20,000. I'm not saying Bittensor is going to run up to $20,000 this bull run, but I'm also not going to say that it's not going to run up to $20,000. I have no idea, but I think it's a quality project. I think it's a very interesting and honestly slightly a scary project with the way that it functions and unlimited nature of its protocol. But it is interesting, and I think it'll be a very quality project just based off of narrative and everything I'm seeing on X and Twitter alone. This is not financial advice, but I will also disclose happily that I'm going to allocate 4.38% of my portfolio into Bittensor, which is a significant portion for a relatively new token, and I do have strong belief in it. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave me a comment below. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm going to continue to make more altcoin videos, so please let me know what projects you would like to see. Maybe I'll do one that I don't even have belief in or don't know about, and then cover it, learn about it, and present it to the community. Also soon, I'm going to be presenting some information about injective protocol, some airdrops, and also how to farm on Cosmos or Atom for airdrops that are coming up in the future. We'll see you in the next video, and safe trading.